There are a lot of ways to get where you're going. Sometimes a trip requires speed. Sometimes we prefer to simply enjoy the scenery. And a trip can be a means to an end, or the trip can be the point. In the coming chapters of the book of Exodus, I think we see that the trip is what the book is really all about. Getting to the promised land is important, but what happens in the wilderness is just as important as the destination. And God doesn't take the easy route. In chapter 13, verse 17, we read, "When Pharaoh let the people go, God did not lead them by the way of the land of the Philistines, although that was near. For God said, lest the people change their minds when they see war and return to Egypt. But God led the people around by the way of the wilderness toward the Red Sea." For about a half dozen reasons, this reads as a bad idea. If you're trying to escape, shouldn't you go directly to your destination? If you want the people to not turn around and go back where they came from, shouldn't you not lead them directly into the wall of a sea? If you're wanting the people to follow you to the promised land, shouldn't you at least start by heading in that direction? These all seem like logical questions that we would ask ourselves, but God leads the Israelite people on their journey as a pillar of cloud by day and as a pillar of fire by night, and we're told what he does is with intention. The Israelites are not warriors, and the Egyptians are, as are the Philistines who occupy the land between Egypt and the promised land. God avoids the conflict that would come with millions of people passing through enemy territory by going around it. And to ensure that the Israelite people are not pursued from behind, he also performs perhaps the most iconic miracle of the Old Testament, the Red Sea. Because, let's be honest, anyone who's read the book up to this point is going to know what comes next. Pharaoh is not willing to let bygones be bygones. Once the Israelites are down the road a bit, he decides that he will chase them down with an army that is ready for war. His chariots ride off into the wilderness in pursuit of the Israelite people, and the Israelites begin to complain as they hear the rumbling of the hooves of the horses in the distance. "Is it because there were no graves in Egypt that you have taken us away to die in the wilderness? What have you done to us in bringing us out of Egypt?" But as with the many other actions of God in the book of Exodus, this moment serves as instruction. God, through Moses and Aaron, parts the sea, making dry ground for a safe passage for the Israelite people, a channel directly between two walls of water. The Israelites pass through to the other side and find themselves on the opposite shore. And the Egyptians, by now unsurprised by the miraculous works of God, enter into the sea behind the Israelites, a wall of water on either side of them. But God brings the water down on the Egyptian soldiers, devastating the military might of Egypt and leaving the Israelites with no pursuers at their back. It's a lesson in God's ability to handle those trials and perils outside of us. God can bring us victory over what plagues us from the outside if he so chooses. God puts our enemies at our feet, and we find ourselves safely protected from the powers that would enslave us. But now, the Israelites will find a hard truth. Not every trial comes from an outside source. Sometimes the trouble that plagues us comes from within. And God will teach them about that in the wilderness as well. I love you, and I pray today that you would see that the path God leads you down is not always the direct one, but that the path he's provided, if followed, will lead to victories we could not have by our own power.